Hi and welcome. I just thought I'd give a bit of a winter update of what's been going on. Just recently we did 5 videos with Brad. You've probably noticed those online. They've covered cam timing, valve clearances and cam belt removal and replacement on Ducati 2 valves. We're hoping to do a couple more of those in the near future. One on Ducati clutches and another on the Ducati charging system. And there's a few more planned for the future after that as well. We'll probably cover 4 valve models in some of those videos as well. Now locally in the garage, I've pretty much finished most of the work I want to do on the Gilera Saturno. Some of you may have watched those videos that I did on the water pump rebuild. It was a pretty arduous job, particularly locating a seal and getting a shaft made, but that's all come together. Nothing much else needs to be done to the bike at the moment. I did a little bit of tidying up of other things, polished up a little bit of alloy here and there, rerouted some of the wiring and cables, just mainly doing a little bit of cleaning and such like, just to make it a little bit more presentable. And I've done about 450 kilometres since that that water pump has been rebuilt. And it's running really nicely. I still find it difficult getting onto lightweight motorcycles because I've just been so used to the larger, heavier motorcycles, particularly Moto Guzzi's, which are all over about 220 kilos, going onto something that's probably around 150 or maybe even a little bit lighter. You find the difference in riding style is quite marked. But I'm really enjoying my time on the Gilera. The seat, well, it's a bit problematic in many respects because there's not much padding there, and I find my left foot has a tendency to go to sleep after about 150 kilometres, so I usually don't ride it much more than that and try to stop for a coffee in the middle. Now the tyres I've got on that have really scrubbed in. I put on Michelin Power RS's, the latest ones, and they've proven to be a superb tyre. I mean, I've actually got the same tyre on the rear of the Benelli, and the new Power RS was certainly an improvement over the earlier models of Michelin sports tyres. Now moving on to other bikes, the Benelli, I've been doing a fair bit of riding on that whilst the Gilera was off the road, and just reacquainting myself with its superb handling and performance. The only downside of the Benelli really is its heavy clutch. I mean, it's very much an underrated motorcycle in Australia. If you're looking at a motorcycle from the early 2000s, sorry, mid 2000s, I'd have to say, a Benelli TNT and a naked would probably be something worth looking at. But of course, there are caveats with that in that parts and service can be difficult. But as a motorcycle, it's certainly a lot cheaper than the equivalent Ducati from the era, and in my mind a much better motorcycle, even though Ducati fans probably will contradict me on that one. Now my Moto Guzzi Le Mans, yes, I'm still looking to do the valve guides on that. I still haven't got around to it, and I think I mentioned that in my first winter update 2 years ago. Well, it's still on the to-do list, and I'm hoping to do that sometime this year. It needs a new rear tyre at the moment, but apart from that, everything else on the bike is pretty much ship shape. It does use a small amount of oil, and it does have a tendency to oil up the plugs, and I think that is due to the valve guides being fairly savagely worn, but I won't know until I take the heads off and the barrels and have a look at the rings, pistons, the bore and the guys, and just see what's going on in there. But the bike still runs like a top, and I'm loath to really touch it while I'm enjoying it so much. And its handling is just so different from these other 2 motorcycles of mine. It's really, even though it's a 1991 model, so it's a lot younger than the Gilera, which is a 1988 model, it really does have the handling characteristics of a bike 20 years older, from the late 60s or early 70s. It requires a lot of counter steering to change direction, and it's quite a unique and different riding experience, and quite a shock if you've never ridden an old motorcycle before. But once you get the hang of them, those Tonti frame Moto Guzzi's actually handle really well, and certainly the Le Mans line of Moto Guzzi's are worth a look if you're interested in having a motorcycle that has that old world charm. Apart from that, we've been doing a service on my wife's Moto Guzzi 750 Breva, which I've done a couple of videos on. There's a couple more in the pipeline. I'll be covering the rear brake pad replacement, and I'll also be doing the valve clearances in a video sometime in the near future. But it never ceases to amaze me how well that motorcycle has lasted. You know, we've had it from new since 2004, I think it was, and it's done over 100,000 kilometres in that time, and it's really only ever had two faults, and both were electrical. One of them was a wire came off the back of the ignition switch. You know, it was just fatigue at the solder joint, and that was pretty easily fixed. Though I must say, though, I had to fix it twice because I did a crummy job first time round. And the other fault was turned out to be just some dirty contacts where the relay's plugged in under the seat, which was causing the bike to cut out intermittently on the freeway. A very frustrating fault, and it took a number of weeks before we traced it down to just dirty electrical contacts. Now, since the odometer has stopped working, it topped out at 9999. It's a digital odometer, and obviously the factory didn't think the bike was going to last as long as 100,000 kilometres. But we worked out that we do roughly 8,000 kilometres a year on the bike, so it's done probably 125,000 kilometres now. And really its only vice is it uses a bit of oil, and certainly uses a bit more now than when it was younger. I mean, the bike sort of used a little bit of oil from new, but with the small oil capacity in those bikes, that oil works pretty hard, and I guess that was the cause of it. That's been partially rectified by the fitting of a sump spacer on this, but it still uses a fair bit of oil. And but in saying that, it's certainly a bike that I would recommend to anyone as a commuter, particularly if you can find a low mileage one. The seat is incredibly comfortable, the riding position is very relaxed, power delivery is very neutral, and it's a very sort of torquey motor. And the handling, well, it's a little old school because it's running cross-ply type tyres. Our 750 Breva is running Pirelli Sport Demons, of which I just put a new one on the rear, and they've worked quite happily on that bike. I guess it must be within the weight and speed rating of what the bike's capable. They've proven to be a very grippy, nice handling tyre. Well, I think that pretty much covers it. I've sort of covered the bikes, covered the videos that we'll probably be doing with Brad down the track, and I've got a couple of interviews with some other people in the motorcycle industry that I've got planned for the rest of this year that should be quite interesting. So I'll see you next time.